Welcome to Coffee with Chris for this week, our 21st episode. I'm so glad you're joining me. And man, I hope you guys have a fantastic weekend planned coming up, whether that's rest and relaxation, being out in the shop, working, traveling and visiting friends or family. Everybody's kind of got a different idea of what um, a great weekend looks like. And so, whatever that is for you, I hope you have that coming up. For us, um, it won't be as rest and relaxation. Now, it's still probably going to be fun. I've got a busy weekend coming up in the shop, and of course, I'm filming this. I film these episodes of Coffee with Chris typically on Friday morning to come out on Saturday morning. So the weekend in the shop involves today, Friday, as well as long as Saturday and Sunday. But I'm really trying to get some things done, not only for some clients but also for the channel here and kind of get ahead of the schedule a little bit. I've currently got three furniture pieces that are in process all at the same time. And so I'm hoping to finish up on one of those. It's a client build, finish that up by Saturday, by tomorrow, or well, today, I guess, if you're watching this Saturday morning. And then I've got two others that I'm working on that are actually not client builds. They're ones for us here. Sorry, the camera just shook. Flash just walked by and hit the tripod. I've got two of them that I'm working on for us here at our own house, one for my office and one for Beth for our living room. And so those are all projects. All three of those will be videos coming up here in the next 3 to 5 weeks, depending on editing and where I kind of lay them out in the timeline. But I'm excited to get those out to you guys. I haven't done a bunch of furniture builds, just a few, and we focus mostly on crafts and things like that. But all three of these are budget-friendly furniture pieces, even the one for the client, because they had a very tight budget. And so I'm excited to get them out and kind of show you how you can be creative and use some things that are more budget-friendly to make some good pieces that serve the purpose that they're intended for. So I'm pretty excited about doing that, and they're all each a little different and creative in their own ways. So super stoked about that. Also, am in the process over the next 4 or 5 days leading into next week of filming a new shop tour video. The original shop tour video I did was very similar to what a lot of people do when they first get the channel up and going, and so we filmed that, I don't know, 6 months ago or something. It was one of the first full-length videos I did. And I've had a few people comment that I need to do an updated one because the shop looks really different than it used to. And it does. We've changed a lot of things out there, not only for me from a woodworking business standpoint for storage and countertop space and things like that, but also for filming. There's better lighting and things like that. So that's coming up also as well. And then, of course, I talked about briefly last week that I've got the surprise box that I had with me from my friend Michael at Working Against the Grain. I have the project in mind. I've decided on it that I'm going to take what he sent me in the box and add on to it and do kind of like a collaboration project. And then I've also got my surprise review project from the product I got in I talked about last week, sitting still in the box on the other side of my office. It's been another week and I haven't got to it yet. So I've got to get that done because I have have an agreement with the people that sent it to me. So the next week is going to be bananas. I guess that's what I'm getting at. The next 7 or 8 days is going to be absolutely crazy, and it's going to be nonstop in the shop. I just coined that phrase. Can I trademark that or something? But so anyways, I want to get to, that's all the rambling I'm going to do today. I want to get to it because I've got a lot to get to. So, the topic I posed for this week was simply about tool brands. And I thought it'd be a great, fun topic. And we may stretch it out to 2 weeks because I didn't get a ton of comments last week, but I'm thinking what I say today is going to maybe spark a few more comments, I'm hoping. And so we'll see. But, I simply want to talk about the idea of the different tool brands. And, if you go on enough forums or go on enough Facebook pages and things like that, or you watch enough woodworking videos, people are very, very opinionated about the tool brands. Now, I'm speaking more from a woodworking standpoint, but as I was kind of thinking about this week and did a little bit of research, because I wanted to get a few facts and figures for us to kind of get us really going on this. Um, I did have a few epiphanies, and so I want to share those today as well. But um, and so, but I was thinking more, more along the hand tool line. There's so many tool brands now that have their battery systems and all their hand tools that continue to make more and more and more of them. It seems like, and so I was thinking really more for a hand tool line. But I'm happy to also get into miter saws, table saws, and all that stuff. And in fact, a lot of these tool brands, I have it with Ryobi. A lot of them make yard tools and mowers and all kinds of stuff is also and things that aren't just woodworking tools. So it's a debate that could go for a while, and I'm happy to take it there if I get enough feedback this week, and we can just carry it into next week. So, but I want to talk about I got 3 comments this week, just kind of their input on the tools they use in their shop, and then I've got some things I want to share and just kind of get the debate rolling and see people agree with me, don't agree with me, or and that's okay too. Everybody's entitled to their opinion, and sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong, and I think we're all like that. So, but the comments from last week just kind of get us going. Um, our friend at James Rohrbach at he left us a comment, and I kind of just he left me some other stuff, but I just kind of pulled out the point about the tools here for this discussion. It says, as for tools go, I too have some Craftsman from when they were quality American made tools. I have a green drill driver and an orange drill driver, and a wish list about half a mile long. It says another good video and anticipating the box reveal. See you then. Yeah, so I had mentioned that when I started with the Ryobi platform, if you will, I think that's the word we're supposed to use, a platform. I had a miscellaneous few drills and stuff, and that was really before I really got into building a lot of stuff. I'd always helped out and did some home remodeling renovations, but not anything that needed an extensive, tools, just some common stuff. And so, I had like a old Black and Decker. I think Sears sold them. Craftsman, Sears sold some plug-in drill, power core drills and things like that. So corded drills and so I got started on the Ryobi because Beth had. I said last week, Beth had a smaller one that she used just when she lived by herself before we met, and then I liked it. So she bought me a gift not too long after we got married, and like a drill driver set for Christmas, and uh, that's just kind of how I started on the platform, and I've just stuck with the lime green since then. So, but yeah, I too had. I think everybody probably had a Craftsman drill at some point in time. At one point that was Craftsman was. I mean, you go to the big department stores like Sears. That was a place to go for all the tools, and I think Craftsman was it was a large brand at one time. Um, and if somebody's, if there's any other ones, that had drill driver, not like Snap-on. I know Snap-on was big for wrenches and things like that, for like mechanics and things. But from like a woodworking or a building standpoint, if there's some other brands that I'm not thinking of from that time period, besides Craftsman, feel free to drop them in the comments, and I'd love to know about those. But yeah, and then he says he has a green drill driver and an orange drill driver. I'm guessing he's talking about Ryobi and Rigid. And and I think that's how a lot of us are. I think a lot of us are, we've just collected a few different ones over the years, and we've got a couple different things. Of course, now with the price of, how much these tools cost and the batteries cost and all those things, if you're going with battery and not electric, plug-in, then you do have to think a little bit on, if you want to stick with one platform or not, unless you just picked a few individual pieces up here and there. Our next comment is from Sing Song Nick, and he's left a few comments before and some other things, and I think I looked on Nick. I think I looked on your page, your YouTube channel, because it looks like you maybe had started one at one time, and you were a musician, right? It's what it looked like, and so I'm assuming that's where the Sing Song Nick handle comes from. And but he says, as far as tools go, I've got Cobalt for my cordless tools. I like the fact that they're 24 volt and just felt better in the hand to me than the Craftsman brand nowadays. I don't have a Home Depot in my town, so it limits my options on local tools, and I don't have that Milwaukee or DeWalt money. Um, Corded tools, I'm less specific on. I've got a couple of skill tools and a Win as well. So far, I've been happy with all of them. Again, man, yeah, I think I don't have any Cobalt cordless tools, and I don't want to comment too much on some of these comments because we're going to get into that here with some of the things I've got that I looked at. But I don't have any Cobalt tools, hand tools. Now, if you've noticed before in the videos or you've seen in the first shop tour video, my table saw is a Cobalt, and it's simply because I'm not real brand loyal, I guess, when it comes to a lot of that stuff. In fact, you'll see when I do a new shop tour video, if you hadn't seen the original one, um, I literally have every tool in my shop is a different brand, and I didn't even realize that till I filmed the first shop tour video. Um, miter saw is different than the table saw, and uh, the bandsaw is different, and the so on and so forth, and the hand tools are different. Everything in my shop is a different brand, so I really have zero brand loyalty. It's like, what's a good deal, what's on sale, and which one do I think will fit what I'm using at the time. And I think a lot of us are like that. Um, and so then he said he doesn't have a Home Depot in his town. So yeah, I mean, do you have a Lowe's? Because obviously Home Depot and Lowe's do carry some different brands in terms of especially the battery platform tools. And so yeah, if you don't have a Home Depot, that's Ryobi, that's Rigid. They do have DeWalt and Milwaukee as well. So definitely different options when you go to buy a tool at the two big box stores, the two main ones. Of course, if you got like an Ace Hardware or something like that, we have four different hardware home improvement type stores here in where I live, and so we've got Home Depot, Lowe's, Ace Hardware, which carries a couple of select tools in different brands, and they are pricier because they're a smaller locally owned store. The one here is, anyways. And then we have Harbor Freight also, and then there's another. I can't think of the name at the top of my head, but it's another locally owned, smaller hardware store. And so definitely got the options. I'm fortunate with that where I live here. And then yeah, he says I don't have the DeWalt or Milwaukee money. Hey, we're right there, buddy. I'm with you on that one. And I want to get into that here in a few minutes as well. But Nick, thanks so much for sending that in, man. And I want to hit on that voltage for your battery too. I think that's a really good point too that I'm going to hit on here in just a minute. The next one is from our friend Michael at Working Against the Grain. He says, on the tools, I'm a Cobalt guy. So we got two for Cobalt there, only because I don't want to change my battery platforms. There you go, just what I was saying. It says, I found that the better tools typically cost more. For example, Powermatic Festool. He said, personally, the best tools are not made on a late Friday afternoon. LOL. Michael, shoot me a follow-up comment on that and tell me what you mean by that. When I read that originally, when I was printing this out for the video this morning, I was thinking maybe you meant those tools, those brands, I'm going to talk about it in a minute, maybe are the idea of those, the design is for more of a like construction guy or the professional grade tools, and they don't work late on Fridays because they take off early for the weekend. That's what I think you're meaning by that, and so clarify that for me. I think that's what you're meaning. It says all tool brands have good and bad points. Like my drills, parts were out for them, and a good question to ask is, what tool do I like most, but wouldn't replace it with the same brand? I'm looking forward to your tool off series. Yeah, so I mean, let's say your impact driver goes down, or it just quits working for whatever reason. Maybe you've had it a long time, whatever. It doesn't matter. It burns out, anything. You use that a lot, but now that you need to replace it, do you go, well, it's worth getting one of this brand because that's my favorite tool or my most used tool, and I'd rather go ahead and upgrade it, so on and so forth. So, man, guys, all three of you, thanks for those comments, and those all hit good points that I'm going to talk about. And also, I think they kind of mirror what a lot of us are like, especially us DIY guys or our small shop or hobby guys or whatever. I think that's kind of a mirrored thing. You just kind of have a mix and match and what's come up and what's been helpful at the time or what you could afford at the time. And I think that's probably on par with most people, I would say. So before I get into talking about a little bit of the research I did and giving my opinion on stuff, I want to say this, and I want everybody to hear me. And if you got different opinions, please put them in the comments for the video this week. I'd like to have some more comments to talk about next week and some more opinions and thoughts. Totally cool with all that. Even if they don't agree with me, I'm totally cool with that as well, as you guys know. And real quick, I also want to put my email down below here. If you want to email me instead of put comments under the video, in the comments section for the video, I'm fine with that too. Again, also, I continue to say, if you want to send me build videos or project videos or pictures, feel free to send those to my email with a description of them. I'd love to share them here on the videos. But here's what I want to say. I am not judging. I am not stating that I think any brand is better than the others. I'm not stating that if you want to spend the higher dollar amount on certain brands that's silly, or if you want to buy budget tools, that's silly. Like, I think there's a place and a spot for all of them, and the different opinions on them are a lot of opinions are valid on a lot of different ones. So nothing is being made that's meant to downgrade any of the tools, any of the brands, or anything. I have budget tools, so I'm definitely not doing that. And so I just want to make that statement real quick, in case I just say something while I'm talking and somebody goes, well, "That sounded like he didn't. He thinks it's silly to do that or silly to do that." Not what I'm saying at all. I just want to make that statement up front. And I think if you guys have watched enough of my videos, you know that, and you know my thoughts on a lot of that stuff. So, but let's get going on it. So, and I got a glare in here. Let me switch over to this side. I want to put a chart up here first, and I found this online. Now, again, you can Google stuff, you can research things, you can pull up YouTube videos on tool comparisons. There's a billion of them. There's a billion charts online. It's all opinion based on whoever made the chart of the video. So we all know that. But I think this chart that I found here, I went through a bunch of them and I found a graphic, and I think it kind of gives a general consensus of what a lot of people think when it comes to the tool brands and where they kind of are placed in a hierarchy, if you want to look at it that way. And again, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I think it's when you pull up a lot of various videos or websites, tool websites and charts and graphs, I think this one kind of sums those up maybe the best in terms of what the overall thought is from industry experts or whoever's making these things. So I want to put this on the screen and go over it real quick, because I think it kind of lays out what I'm wanting to get at. So let me show you this, and I kind of read through it here in case you're watching on a smaller screen and it's hard to read. I'm gonna try to make it as big as I can here. But they have kind of 5 tiers. And of course, there are other brands that aren't on this chart. There's brands that, we don't carry here in the States, that you see on some videos you watch and things like that. These are just the ones that I think are more well-known, especially, here. So they have on there, they call their expert grade. And they have the two big dogs there, Milwaukee and DeWalt. And I would say that if you pull up videos on YouTube that say, ranking tool brands or whatever, that's a typical thing you see is DeWalt and Milwaukee, especially when we're talking about hand tools. Now, again, keep in mind, I'm really talking about battery-powered hand tools and the different battery platforms. That's really what this is based off of. It's not off of table saws and all this other kind of stuff. So that's what I'm talking about here with this chart. So Milwaukee and DeWalt, I think those are the two most common ones you see up at that level. Then they have pro grade, Rigid, Makita, and Bosch. Then they go down to homeowner and DIY grade, Ryobi, Cobalt, Craftsman, and Skill. And as we all know, Skill is making a comeback. In the last many years, they've really started their battery platform, and you're seeing more and more of those in. I know my Lowe's carries Skill, and that's one of the brands that they carry. So you're starting to see that come up, and then Lowe's also has got Craftsman as a brand the last many years after, especially after Sears went out of business. I think they actually, I think I read they bought Craftsman, the bought it from Sears. So budget, on their budget friendly tier, they have Porter Cable, Black and Decker, and Matibo. I think Meta. I think I pronounced that right. Um, Again, different brands you can get at different locations. And I talk about Black and Decker. I used to have all Black and Decker because Sears sold them, and they were cheaper than Craftsman. And I had Black and Decker drills and Black and Decker weed eater. I mean, just again, that's at the time when I was younger. That was all I could afford back then at all. And again, nothing wrong with them if you got it now. Just what they consider it kind of the budget friendly. And then they have a category that says cheap. And I kind of laughed at that because I have some of these also. Chicago Electric, which is the Harbor Freight, they sell at Harbor Freight. Hart, which is Walmart, and Hercules again at Harbor Freight. And I have tools in several of these tiers, and so I wanted to show you that because I think that gives us a good base for looking at it. Now, agree or disagree, everybody may different opinions on the tiers there. But like I said, I think one thing that we can agree on we should be able to agree on, is when you look at the majority of tool experts or websites, or like I said, videos or anything, typically those two, Milwaukee and DeWalt, are at the top of tier. And in fact, when you look at like this brand versus this brand, it's usually Milwaukee versus DeWalt. Sometimes they'll mix in. I've seen some like with Bosch mixed in for certain types of tools, but typically when you're talking about drills and drivers, it's typically those two, Milwaukee or DeWalt. And I think those are because those are two big ones that tradesmen use in terms of like construction workers, guys building houses, that type of trade. Those are two that you see most on a lot of job sites. And so I want to get into that. And then, of course, we get down into like Rigid, for example. That's a Home Depot. That's their brand. Actually, if you don't know that, Rigid is the Home Depot brand. That's one reason why they're orange as well. They sell them at Home Depot. But and then you got a few others. And then I think a lot of us live in this Home Depot. I mean, this homeowner DIY category, and especially if we have a garage workshop or woodworkers and you're wanting to get some budget friendly items that still work well and function good for your needs. I think a lot of us live in that middle category. Ryobi, Cobalt. We just had two of the comments say Cobalt they go with. Craftsman and like I said, Skill is kind of making a reemergent. And one of the popular kind of at home table saws is the Skill. The Skill one has come up in the last few years, and you see a lot of videos and reviews on the Skill table saw. And so and then, of course, you got your other brands there, and I have some of each of those. So, again, not knocking anything because I've got about all of them. I don't have any Milwaukee or DeWalt because, frankly, I just hadn't wanted to pay for them. If you just want me to be honest about it, but I want to make a few comparisons real quick, and then I want to give you my thoughts on why people have strong opinions about these things. And so stick with me and just get through a few of these numbers. So I pulled up a couple of categories that I thought were key for certain uses. And the first one I want to talk about is the platforms themselves. And so, if you go to your Lowe's or your Home Depot or, wherever you get your tools from, which a lot of them come from one of those two stores, you can get a lot of these platforms. Or you can order off Amazon, some of them. You see the whole setups, you see the whole array. You'll have like at my Home Depot, there's a Ryobi section and a bunch of the Ryobi tools. Certainly not all they carry because they carry 300 plus different tools that go with their 18-volt battery platform. but a bunch of them are there. And then there's signages. And then they have the Milwaukee section, and they have the DeWalt section, and even a Bosch section in my Home Depot, I believe. Um, I usually don't even venture down that way. Because honestly, the Ryobi section is the first one. The way they have it set up in my store, it's the first one on the end of the aisle. Not that I don't walk down that aisle for different other things, but since that's the platform I'm on, I kind of look more specifically there. And then they carry some other brands too for different things. But so when you're talking about platform brands, so I just kind of pulled up a few things, the best I could find off some different websites. And so I'm going to talk about the ones I could find. DeWalt, um, 250 plus is how they have it listed, different tools that go with their battery platform. Milwaukee, 250 plus. Makita, 275 plus. Bosch, 100 plus, so quite a bit less. Ryobi, 300 plus. Craftsman, 100 plus. Those are the ones I was able to find numbers from individual websites or from some articles. And so I want to talk about that a little bit and the different needs for that. Now, 250 to 300, those are pretty close. So you're talking DeWalt and Milwaukee, the two big dogs there. Obviously, 250 different tool options. That's a lot and covers the span of pretty much anything you need. Ryobi, my lime green guys, 300 plus. They have the most of the tool brands in terms of a variety of tools. And I think that is because Ryobi really does, I think, catered more towards the homeowner and the DIYer. And so they have a lot of different tools. I mean, and not saying the other brands don't have some of these, but again, I'm going off what I look at the most. I mean, they have flashlights, fans, speakers. I mean, small leaf blowers, big blowers, small little dust collectors. So I think they have a lot of tool options that cater towards the homeowner or the DIYer or something that may come in handy around the house when you're doing a small project or replacing something. Whereas, some of the other tool brands focus on specific, more of a thing like a construction worker. Well, yes, okay, so we talked about DeWalt, Milwaukee being the two big brands for some of these tradesmen where they're building houses every day and things like that. They do have a lot of tool options, but I think their focus is more on drills, drivers, tools that are geared more towards their trade and what they do with them. And whereas like Ryobi, again, for example, is kind of homeowner, DIYer. So they got all these options for these tool things that can all be used on the same battery platform, that may come in handy for somebody doing at home type of things. Now, and that's not to say they can't be used for the woodworker or the metal worker, whatever your craft is. They certainly can, and all these can to some extent. But like, I'll give you an example. I bought a variety pack, a tool pack from Ryobi a few years ago, and I got a small, skill saw, and I use it occasionally, but it's got to be something thinner because it's not as heavy duty and doesn't have as much power to it as my big plug-in, bigger skill saw. But like in that pack came a flashlight, a small little flashlight. Put your battery in it, same 18-volt battery they use for all their stuff, and you've got a flashlight with you. I actually have it. It's on my tool holder on my wall out in the shop. I have never once ever used it. In fact, I forget I ever have it. And there's plenty of times when I've needed a flashlight, if the power's gone out, or to look under a cabinet or something, and I always just grab my cheap little old regular flashlights I've got out in the shop, and totally forget that I have a flashlight that would actually run quite a while on that 18-volt battery if we needed it. And so they have a lot of little things like that can be handy to a homeowner. But I think that's it's kind of what their brand is geared towards more so. And so, but you see these other platforms, some of them don't have near the variety of tools. Again, they have all the main tools, drills, drivers, things like that, angle grinder, probably a Sawzall type tool, a multi-tool, things like that. But so I think the platform size can make a difference too, depending on the application that you use for your tools for. Let's talk about the warranties real quick. And I only pulled up 4 of them, just kind of an example. And I looked at a few others, and they're very similar. Um, and so for Milwaukee, there's a 5-year. Of course, all the warranties are limited. We all know that. Depending on what goes bad on the tools or goes down, they may or may not be covered. There's the fine print on everything. We know that. But Milwaukee offers a 5-year warranty. DeWalt is a 3-year. Makita is a 3-year. Ryobi is a 3-year. Those are the 4 I pulled up. And some of the other ones I think have 2-year, 3-year. Some may just have a 1-year. I think we see that as something being important, again, depending on the application. So let's go back to the 2 big guys, DeWalt and Milwaukee, that job site type tools. That's what they're geared towards, right? And so having a 5-year warranty from Milwaukee, when you're using this thing every day, you're dropping it. I'll give you an example. So when you're on a job site, if you build houses for a living, you do construction. And I'm just throwing some numbers out there. They're not exact. But you may pull the trigger on your drill or your driver 1,000 times a day. Whereas somebody like me that does woodworking, even on a bigger project, if you're building something that involves a lot of screws, maybe you pull the trigger on your drill or driver 100 times a day. Again, just throwing a number out there, but it's obviously much greater when you're building a house, and that's what you're out doing all day long instead of just doing some projects and things in the shop at home, in the garage, or fixing something in your house or whatever. And so the idea of the bigger warranty may be very appealing for somebody using like that Milwaukee brand for a trade, like a construction or builder. Having that extra warranty period or the warranty being better, I didn't get down into the fine print of all the warranties, may very well be worth the cost of that Milwaukee over my Ryobi, based on the abuse and use that it gets. And so I think those are also things that come into play when you're talking about, is it worth spending the money, and depending on the application and what you use it for. So again, just some food for thought, not saying anything's right or wrong, just food for thought. And so those are just a couple of the things I pulled out to kind of get this, hopefully an extra week of tool talk going. But so my thoughts are this, and I'll wrap up this week, and hopefully we can continue it next week. We'll get some more opinions. But the one thing I don't like is tool snobbery, if that's a word, if that's a term. I think it is. But I see some videos. In fact, I watched a video a few days ago, and it was one of the large channels on YouTube, and he made a comment about actually Ryobi in specific, because he has all the higher end tools. He spends a lot of money on his stuff, and he makes a lot of money off his client builds and projects. But he made a comment about feeling sorry for a person that had to use Ryobi tools. I feel sorry for people that have to use Ryobi tools, or you have to use a Ryobi drill or whatever. And I just laughed that off because, like I said, everybody's got opinions, and that's okay. It didn't make me stop watching the video. I still watched it, because I was enjoying the video. But I think, some people have opinions on that stuff, and some of it I think is not justified. Some of it is. But that's what I don't like. I don't like when people are downgrading the passion for the hobby of woodworking, or even your business, if you have a woodworking business, because you choose to buy budget-friendly tools, or you don't want to spend the extra money on this brand or this tool. That's when I do get irritated, is when people kind of downgrade or talk down about people that do have certain brands of tools for whatever circumstance it may be. I think that's ridiculous. I think it's silly. It's kind of stupid. Everybody has different budgets. And here's the thing. I'll just throw it out there and be honest, and kind of, I don't think this is going to sound bad. It might to somebody. I can afford to buy a Milwaukee drill as opposed to a Ryobi drill. I can afford to buy a Festool product as opposed to, the sander I use, which is a Ryobi. I choose not to because I don't want to spend that amount of money towards that thing. So people are in that boat. A lot of people in that boat. You could, but you choose not to because you don't think you really need to, or you just don't want to because it doesn't make sense. And so I don't like when people are snobby and talk down about people that have the other brands as if they can't be a good woodworker because they use a budget-friendly or cheaper tool and they don't have stuff that they spend a lot of money on. So that's a first thought. Let me get that out of the way. The second thought is I do think the application and I do think the purpose for the tools do make a difference. I didn't used to think that way, but I have after the more and more I think about it, and the more I use, and I use tools for the woodworking business. I do think if you're on a construction site and you have a company and you have several guys that work for you and you want to invest in a tool brand, I do think that warranty would make a difference. I do think that power would make a difference if there's a difference in that. I do think that ergonomics and the way tools fit in your hands and how heavy they are would make a difference. For example, the one complaint I've always had about my Ryobi tools is how heavy they are. The batteries are bigger than most of the batteries you see even for the same 18 volt. They're bigger than the batteries that Milwaukee and DeWalt and Rigid, for example, have. My brother-in-law, I think I talked about it in another video, he has all Rigid tools. That's what he likes. That's what he's always had. And when I go work with him and we're building a deck or something out at the farm or whatever project we're working on, sometimes I grab his Rigid drill or driver because it's sitting next to me and my Ryobi's over there or whatever. And there is a weight difference. I mean, it is lighter weight. And when you've got a drill or a tool or whatever you're using hanging on your belt for a whole day, and you're climbing around like he builds houses, you're climbing around building stuff, the weight would make a difference. And the ergonomics in your hand, the ergonomics on some of his drills, they're smaller, the size of them and the way they're angled are different than my Ryobis. And I actually do like them better in that regard. And so the same thing goes for some of the Milwaukee drills and drivers. I've picked them up at Home Depot and looked at them. And the size and the actual driver, the tool itself, if I was using them for daily building and construction all day long, I would probably maybe go that route, just based on the ergonomics and the weight and things like that. So I can see where that's an option for that type of work. For me, working in a shop, doing stuff around the house, doing projects that I do for my business and for the channel here, the ergonomics and the weight don't really make that much of a difference. I'm drilling a couple screws and it's sitting over here while I'm doing this, and then I'll pick it back up. And my nail gun is quite large, my Ryobi nail gun. I've talked about that in videos before. But for the amount I use it for, all at one time without taking a break, they're fine. They work great. And so the price versus the function, in terms of those things, lines up for me. When we talk about durability, that's one thing you hear that people knock. And again, I'm using Ryobi a lot because that's what I have. But Cobalt and these other brands are all in the same. They're kind of that Cobalt's in the same category as Ryobi is what a lot of people, for DIY, home improvement, things like that. I've never had a problem with any of my Ryobi tools or the batteries. And I talked about it on the battery review video I did. My drill and driver set, Beth got me, 8 years ago. I still have, I've added more batteries, because I've gotten more tools and bought more batteries, but I still have the same battery, the 18 volt plus platform battery that came with it. The drills and drivers still work. They're still the two I use every day. And the same battery is in my battery rotation that came with those. They all work great. They all work fine 8 years later. And so for me, for what I do, it makes sense to be on that budget-friendly level and that platform. And I would argue with anyone that it doesn't make sense for me to spend 2 and 3 times the money on the tool and the battery for what I use it and the function I use it for. Somebody may disagree, but to me, that's what makes sense. So that's why when you see videos in the shop or you see things, there's a lot of lime green out there because they fit my needs and they work just fine. And I never had one go down. I've never had one burn out, and I've never had one break. So it doesn't make sense to me to change. Not at this point anyways. And I might not ever. Who knows? I also have, now those are 18 volt, which a lot of platforms are on. Now, we did mention in the comment that he likes the Cobalt because it's a 24 volt. That may make a difference to you. A lot of the brands do have 18 volt. Some have, like he said, a 24 volt. I know one, I think it was Milwaukee or DeWalt when I was looking at their website. They have 20 volt. So yeah, maybe a little more juice. And so maybe that's a big deal to you. Do those extra 2 volts or 6 volts, whatever the difference is, does that make a difference? Again, if you're driving long construction screws, all day long, that little bit of power may make a big difference to you. So if anybody's got any input on that, I'd love for you to leave a comment because I'd love to know what your experience is on that type of platform or that type of trade or that using it for that purpose. Again, I don't have any personal experience on that. I've helped build houses and build cabins with my brother-in-law, but it's not all day, every day. That's what you do for a living. So, little different. So, power of the battery, does that make a difference to you? How many volts comes with it, and those sort of things. So, what matters and why does it matter to you? So I think that's really the gist of it for me is, what is the use of it? What are you using it for? And I do think that can make a difference in the platform or the brand that you're on. That's really all I got today, guys. Actually, I do have one more thing that Beth pointed out to me. We were talking right before I started filming this morning, and I was telling her kind of my thoughts and what I had in mind. And one thing that she pointed out that I think I've experienced and we've experienced is if you're not just super strict or super high on one particular brand. So if we take the brand loyalty out of the equation, one of the things that we've noticed is that what has made a bigger difference or what has come up more for us has been not so much the brand of the drill, because like I said, I've had a few others before I kind of went exclusively Ryobi. Not so much the brand of the drill or the brand of the tool, whether that's a multi-tool or whatever it is, but more so the bits and the blades and those other parts of your tool function. To me, those have made a bigger difference than the actual color of the drill, the brand of the drill, right? I think there's a huge difference in quality of drill bit. I mean, I bought drill bits that were super cheap and they snapped the first time I was drilling a hole. You can spend a little more on higher quality bits and get a lot of use out of them. I ran into that with Forstner bits. I bought cheap Forstner bits that you couldn't even get through a tougher board or a tougher piece of wood. And then you had to go, just kind of brush those aside and go buy a nicer quality to get your job done. So I think that's something to add to the conversation is, while yes, maybe brands for certain functions can make a difference, or certain platforms can make a difference, but also the accessories and the things that you use, the bits and blades and things that you use in the tools, I think are a big part of the discussion. And depending on, again, the application that you're using them for, really can make a big difference in the performance of the tool. And maybe we could argue make a bigger difference in the performance of the tool than the actual brand itself. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for joining me today. Hope you guys have a great rest of your weekend or your week, depending on when you're watching this. Thank you so much again for supporting the channel. If you haven't liked and subscribed already, I'd love for you to do that so you can continue watching Coffee with Chris's and our ongoing discussions, and also, of course, the weekly videos that come out that have builds and tips and tricks and crafts and whatever else we come up with. Thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you again next time. Be blessed.